between Battle Creek and Kalamazoo that I got caught on, so thank goodness for four-wheel drive. I always try to trim that motor down when you're trolling around so we don't, I guess we don't have a battery unhooked, so. We tested everything, everything's short for you. Well, we got no battery on the big engine, but you know, the worst thing that could happen is if I'm out there and I kind of spin around the wrong way or something like that and just knock a hole through the side and everybody get wet, but probably need to untie the other one from the dock here too, but anyways, man, it's good to be back. This is my first show of the season. You know, I had a great holiday. Hopefully everybody had a great holiday and New Year. I love this time of the year in Michigan. You know, it's kind of the one time for me in my job where I get a little bit of downtime. I get a little downtime through Christmas and through New Year's. I try to do a little ice fishing. I don't know if you like to ice fish, but I really like to ice fish. And we really didn't get that opportunity before Christmas. And, you know, now we finally got some good weather and we can, you know, get out there on the ice. But this is a little ridiculous. You know, I like it a little warmer than 5 or 10 degrees, and it'd be nice if the wind wasn't blowing 40 miles an hour. But I promise you this week I'm going to get out there and I'm going to catch some bass. I'll catch my first bass through the ice, you know, of 2015. And it's a lot of fun. What amazes me and what I've learned about ice fishing is how the bass, how active they are in really cold water. You know, I mean, even on a day like today, you know it's super cold right underneath the ice, but down a little ways, that water temperature really doesn't change. And they have the same, they kind of have the same ideas as far as how active or inactive they get based on these weather fronts. So today, even though it'd be a nasty day to be out on the ice, I bet you the bass are really biting. You know, it'd just be really hard to keep everything unthawed and stuff like that. So we'll get a chance to do that. But I know what most of you are thinking about is the same thing I'm thinking about. It's going to be, hey, what are we going to be doing here in April when we can finally get back out there on the water and that early catch and release season opens? Been some exciting things with the DNR this past year. They're really looking hard at our bass seasons, and with any luck, we're going to be able to catch and release bass fish this coming year all the time. So that's something that's new coming down the pipeline, and we won't have to worry about being out there and having to crappie fish and things like that early in the season. You know, I love that early season, and I love the late fall too. So it's a great time to be out fishing. And, you know, I'm looking forward to it. So this spring, you know, I know the bass are going to be ready for us, and there's a lot of things. You know, this past year on the tour for me, there was quite a few new techniques that materialized and new lures and things like that really came out that really set the tour on by storm. And really, what's hot in our industry or the trends that we have really revolve around our tournament schedule. So, you know, this year we've got a whole different schedule. We got a West Coast swing. We're going to Lake Havasu, which is a real deep, clear reservoir that's got a lot of smallmouth bass in it. We're going to the Sacramento Delta, which is phenomenal fishing out there. It's really heavy vegetation and it's tidal body of water. We start off in Orange, Texas, right down on the Gulf Coast, where you can catch a bass and a redfish on back-to-back casts. And then we end up with that northern swing. We're coming back to St. Clair. Gotta hate that, huh? I'm really looking forward to that one. We're also going to Waddington, New York, and you know, so we got some good smallmouth venues too. But a couple things that I saw this past year that I really wanted to show you, a couple trends that I saw and things that I really learned a lot about this past year, I want to show you here today. So one of them is, you know, the bladed swim jigs, you know, the chatterbaits. It's not new. Chatterbait isn't anything new, but there's been a lot of advancements in the lures themselves, the trailers, and the way that you really fish the bait as far as your total equipment. A chatterbait is just a bladed jig. It's got a blade on the front that gives off a lot of vibration, and you know, usually it's got a skirt on it. I've got two different ones rigged right here. I've got one rigged typical, standard chatterbait style right here, with a skirt on it with a trailer, and then one with just a plastic swim bait body on it. And what I learned about these is just how versatile they are through all the different seasons of the year. We started out last year at Lake Guntersville in the Bassmasters Classic, and a Federation guy named Paul Mueller almost won the thing with a chatterbait there in that real cold water there at Lake Guntersville. The thing that really surprised me there a little bit was just how effective it was in a lot of different areas of the lake. One thing that I really look for if I'm going to throw these baits, though, these bladed swim jigs, is grass or vegetation. So fortunately, most of our lakes in Michigan have a lot of grass and vegetation, don't they? And don't think that it's just a largemouth lure, because the smallmouth bite them pretty good too. I've had great success with them. I've learned that this bait's a lot more versatile than what I thought. But my favorite place to throw it definitely is around a lot of vegetation. If you got some milfoil or coontail or anything like that, it really works real well. And I think what's so special about it is the displacement of the water. I mean, that blade pushes so much water, creates so much vibration. It's one of the best feeling lures you can throw. When you cast that thing out there and reel it back to the boat, I mean, it about knocks the rod tip off. It feels so good. You can really tell that it's making a lot of vibration, it's displacing a lot of water, and by that blade pushing that water, it wants to lift. So that's why it fishes so good through the grass, because you can really control the depth of this bait real well. And fish it up through the grass. It gives off a ton of vibration, so if the bass are buried down in it, they'll find it, feel it, and come out there and bite it. So you can see right here, I've got a white skirt. I've got a chartreuse tail on this one, and this is a real unique tail. This is a new bait that we designed just for Strike King, just for these types of baits, and it's called a blade minnow. And what it is it's got a bunch of segments in the middle of it, and it's got just a flat fish tail. Instead of having a swim bait tail with a paddle that moves back and forth, there's so much water moved by the front blade on your chatterbait or your bladed swim jig that if you use a regular swim bait, it doesn't swim. If you put one on the back, you'll notice it doesn't just swim back and forth. It's very erratic if you put a regular swim bait on. With that segmented body, it's just really lively. It looks like it's a real fish. And again, it's kind of hard to see there from the stands, but that tail is just constantly going back and forth. That skirt's kind of wiggling, and that liveliness of that tail really makes a difference. Right there, one of those trout even came out there and dropped that down there and see if they like that too. I'm sure they can feel it. Look at them coming for it. They can feel that. They can see it. It's moving a lot of water. It's creating a lot of disturbance. And I like to throw it like this, the standard style with a skirt and the body on it. If the water's got a little bit of color in it, or if the grass is real dirty, real thick. So this right here creates a lot of displacement. And this is a little different bait right here than most. This is a Strike King Rage blade. And the unique thing about this, instead of having a jig head with a blade in the front, this has got the weight on the actual bottom of the blade. And what I like about that is when I cast this thing out there and drop it, it falls straight to the bottom just like a jig does, okay? Compared to a chatterbait that the blade's in the front, or Strike King makes one like that too called a Pure Poison, it basically just kind of falls like a big blob and doesn't fall straight to the bottom. When this drops in the water, I can drop it straight vertical. And what I really like about that is this makes it a bait that I can fish not just on a cast and retrieve, but I can also drop it to the bottom, I can jig it, I can rip it up, I can pitch it out by a dock piling and let it fall straight down. You can fish it like a jig and a spinnerbait all at once. So it has a much more unique action than the other ones, and that's what I like to do. It allows me to fish it in a lot deeper water and fish it just with a yo-yo technique if I'd like to too. And it just really opens up the versatility of this bait. Now it comes in just a couple of sizes. It comes in a 1/2 ounce and a 3/8 ounce size. And with that weight on the bottom, it wants to make it ride a little higher. So most of the time, I like the heavier version. I like the 1/2 ounce size. I can cast it out there, and with a medium retrieve, it's going to run at whatever level that I let it fall to. So if I count it down to 6 feet and just run it with a medium retrieve, it's going to stay right in that zone. If I want to run this thing right underneath the surface, you cast it out there, and you can actually just wake it right underneath the top, right there. I mean, it's very easy to keep it at a certain depth zone in the water, and that's the unique thing about this category of baits, just like a spinnerbait, is that you can keep that lure anywhere you want in the water column. You know, a crankbait or something like that, it's going to dive down to its depth. You're not going to be able to control where it's at. So that right there gives it a lot of versatility. But what I've found in fishing a lot of our waters where it's a little clearer, having something that has a smaller profile to it and more natural color really makes a big difference in these baits. So this is just the same bait. This is a Strike King Rage blade right here, but with just the blade minnow on it. No skirt, no bulkiness to it that way, and it just really enhances that action. You can see I've got a green pumpkin kind of bluegill color on here, and this blade is the same way. This one's a green pumpkin blade. We make it with a clear blade. We call it a naked rage blade. So it doesn't have any flash, no vibration, other than what that thing is kicking off to it. And, you know, it's just a lot subtler in a clear water environment. And this, it's got the same thing. I can drop that all the way down. But with no skirt on there or anything, you can see, I mean, that bait really has tremendous lively action to it. It looks like a real bait fish swimming. See if those trout there like that one again, too. Look at them come out of there. They're hiding in the shadows. They're afraid to come out here in the open blue. But just having that right there without all that extra bulk to it, I found that I get a lot of extra bites to it. So this is something you should definitely add to your arsenal. It's one of the best early spring baits that you can have in your tackle box. And I like a lot of lures. You know, the thing about it is nowadays, you know, I've got a tackle box full of stuff. I've got crankbaits, jerkbaits, spinnerbaits, bladed jigs, you know, all your finesse baits, your plastics, things like that, plus your standard jigs. We got swim jigs. There's so many choices that you have, and all of them can be really good under different situations. But what I'm trying to always find is that lure that I can be very efficient with, cover a lot of water, and still make inactive bass strike. And that's what I've found that these things really do. They move so much water that they'll bite this when they won't bite a standard spinnerbait. So first thing this spring, I know that, you know, I can get out there even when the water's cold with one of these bladed jigs like this. It's got a lot of vibration. I can fish it around that shallow grass. And one of my favorite things to do is go out there on the first warm day we have of the year, go where the bottom's real dark in the area of the lake. It's shallow. The wind's maybe been pushing in there, trying to warm it up a little bit. And if there's some dead vegetation, you know, where there was a big lily pad field last fall, where those dead pad stems are at, those lily pad roots, and that mud bottom that's going to hold some heat, slow roll one of these, you know, bladed jigs through that area, and you're going to be surprised at some of the bass that you're going to catch. What amazes me every spring when I get out there is just how shallow, how fast the bass get, even when the water's still real cold. They want to be up there in those areas, and that's where they really get early in the season. So that's something that you really want to try this coming year. And again, it's something that I'm going to fish all season long. I throw them in the summer out at St. Clair for smallies. It's got a ton of vibration to it. It's got a lot of displacement. I'll throw a big bait like this, something real bright, and they'll come a long ways to bite it. So don't think that it's just a cold water thing or it's just for heavy grass, but they definitely excel in that environment. That being said, you know, it's still really hard for me to get away from Old Faithful. I love to throw a spinnerbait, and I think because we have so many tools in our arsenal now that we kind of forget about certain lures. You know, buzz baits, for instance. You know, how many people throw a buzz bait anymore? Anybody throw a buzz bait very often? I still love buzz baits. I love spinnerbaits. Again, we have so many neat, cool baits now. We got swim baits. We've got all these crankbaits and things, lures that'll do the same job. And all I'm looking for out of a lure is it's a tool. And I've got a certain set of conditions out there in the water, certain scenario that I'm trying to cover, or a certain area that I'm trying to fish. And I want to pick the lure in my tackle box that I think is going to be the most efficient and yet also the most productive based on the current weather and wind and water conditions that I have. And for me, a spinnerbait is still one of those lures that I fish an awful lot. You know, in our lakes up here, we have a lot of clear water, so most of the time I want to fish a faster retrieve with my spinnerbait. So almost always in Michigan, on our clear lakes, I'm going to throw a double willow combination spinnerbait. This is a Strike King finesse spinnerbait. It's got a little smaller blades to it. It's got a heavy head, and it allows me to just be able to reel that bait a lot faster. You know, I want to keep that bait higher in the water column because you don't want the fish to get too good a look at it. You know, when you're throwing a spinnerbait, you're imitating a bait fish or a small school of bait fish. So one of the number one things with it is not let the fish get too good a look at it. So if you let it get down in that clear water and you're reeling it along real slow, they're going to really get a good look and be able to tell what it is. Just like those trout there, they run out there and take a look at it, but they don't commit to it. So one of the best ways to trigger bass with a spinnerbait is to not give them a good look at it, fish it fast, and make it look like it's going to be an easy meal to catch. So what I try to do is add a lot of action to it. You know, if you've got targets in the water, you know, if you got something like a boat dock like that, you can throw it up there by it and try to get it to bang into the corner of the dock or the piling, something like that to create a disturbance out of that lure. Make the blade ding against the corner. Try to get the fish to react to it. But in a lot of cases, a lot of our lakes, we don't have that opportunity. You know, we're just fishing it over a big grass flat, you know, out there in Lake St. Clair, one of my favorite places to throw a spinnerbait. There's nothing you can run your lure into, so you just got to try to trigger the fish to bite. And if you just cast it out there and reel it with a steady retrieve like that, the only bass you're going to catch are the really active ones. You know, the ones that are really aggressive and really in a feeding mode. And if you find the right area where there's a lot of bait fish and a lot of bass and they're actually feeding, there's no faster way to catch them. But day in, day out, most of the time you're going to have to do something to make them react. So what I try to do is give them a reason to think that that's a spinnerbait that's going to be a good meal for them. So I'm going to jerk it, I'm going to snap it a lot, I'm going to try to get those blades to kind of bang together. I want that skirt to flare. I want to make it look like it's got something wrong with it, look like a bait fish that is wounded or hurt. Draw their attention, make it look unnatural. You know what I mean? As far as in the motion and the movement that it's creating out there. Bass as a predator are attracted to erratic movements by their prey. Anytime they're sitting there out there in the water and there's a bunch of bait around them, a bunch of bluegills, a bunch of shiners or shad or alewives or anything like that, how are they going to pick out the one they're going to target out of that school of 1,000? They want one they can catch. They want an easy meal. So they want to find one that has maybe been hurt by a bass before, that's got some scales knocked off of it. So, you know, that brand new shiny one out of the package, sometimes it's best to scuff it up a little bit. You know, those crankbaits, a lot of times, that got the paint wore off them, they catch fish better, don't they? Well, you want it to look a little more unnatural. So I do a lot of that with my retrieve. So just by fishing the bait fast is really going to help you do a lot of that. And the other thing is really try to target the locations where you think the bass are at. You know, so much of our fishing here in Michigan is very visible in the fact that we have pretty clear lakes. You know, our stained water compared to what we fish a lot in the South is really, really clear. And that really gives me an advantage because in a lot of cases I can see with my eyes where the bass is going to be. You know, nowadays the electronics that we have are absolutely ridiculous. You know, we've got side imaging, we've got down imaging, we've got 360 imaging. We can see all around the boat. You can see the weeds, the grass, the bait fish. You can see the fish with them. It's amazing. And then when we have GPS mapping technology, when we find a spot that's got fish, we can get back to it within a 1 or 2 foot area. I mean, a really small area. So our electronics really help us a lot, but there's nothing more important to me when I'm fishing out here in Michigan than having a really good pair of polarized sunglasses, because I can see the clumps in the grass, I can see the bait fish, I can see the dark spots, the light spots that are going to hold fish. And that's the things that you want to target. You know, if you make a cast to that boat dock right there and there's a bass sitting underneath there, if you can make your very first cast, you know, right out there and right down to where that you're right down the side of that boat and not going through it like that, you want to go right down the outside. I mean, you don't want to be 10 feet over here to the right of it. They're not going to come out there. They're not going to run all the way out there and get that bait. But if I can make a cast and get it close to where the fish is actually sitting, and then make my lure look like it's going to be a pretty easy meal, you know, if I run it right along the side right there and then jerk it and twitch it a few times like that, a lot of times I'm going to be able to get them to commit to running out there and biting it. So having that first cast be very accurate and very precise makes a big difference. You know, you get that nice shock type bite, just like that. You were surprised that I threw that right at you right then, right? Well, most people would try to knock that out of the way, but not you. You know, you're a little slow. It is Friday afternoon. Nobody's working today, obviously, right? Nobody's got a job. Thank God the gas prices are coming down, though, huh? How about that? Gosh, I drove over here and I said, you know, I had to stop and put some gas in my truck, and it was like $24, and I had to, you know, I put like 3/4 of a tank in. I'm like, wow, that is, you know, normally it's 50, so I was really glad to see that. But you know, that bodes well for this summer too, right? You know, our stuff is better than it's ever been. Our equipment's a lot better, but you know, in the end, it all comes down to the presentation that you put in your lures out there on the water, and going out there and just casting out there and having a good time with your buddies and just casting out there and you know, retrieving the lure straight back to the boat is not going to get you a lot of strikes anymore. You really gotta have a good presentation matched with the right retrieve for those conditions to be successful day in and day out. You know, even though we have the best fishing, I believe, in Michigan, we've got more lakes, we've got more different opportunities to fish, you still have to be a good smart angler out there. Follow the weather patterns, follow the conditions, and match your presentation to the water clarity, the time of the day, the forage base, and things like that. And if we can do all that, we're going to be a lot more successful out there on the water. Instead of just going out there and haphazardly casting around, fishing, you know, saying, hey, I don't know, you know, I'm going to try this spinnerbait for an hour and hoping it's the right tool. I want to really try to make good educated guesses on the lures that I'm going to use, the colors that I'm going to throw, so I know I'm matching the forage, and try to match it with a good retrieve that's going to help me be successful for that given day. So there's a lot to it. Bass fishing's a science that's far from exact. I can tell you, I sure don't have it figured out. I mean, there's some days that I go out there and I'm like, wow, what are they thinking? What's going on today? But day in, day out, I can usually put something together pretty good. And like you, I'm pretty excited for this coming season to come. So again, I'm going to be here all day today. The Ultimate Fishing Show is one that I always look forward to every year. I know my buddy Mark Zona was over here yesterday. He's a nut. We did a couple shows together this year, so you'll see some of that stuff airing pretty quick too. But all weekend long, there's going to be a lot of seminars, some of them here in Lake Ultimate, some of them in the room. You want to check the show flyer schedule. So no matter what your interest is, if you're interested in trout or walleye or panfish or crappie or muskie, you know, there's something going on for everybody here. And we've got a lot of vendors here selling a lot of the latest tackle. So make sure you have a great time here at the show. Check it all out. And I think I got another seminar a little later on at 5 o'clock. And I've got some other techniques we're going to talk about then. I got another one at 7 o'clock. So if you're still here a little later, we're going to kind of mix it up and give you the full gamut of some of the latest tricks and techniques and some of the hottest new lures that I've got this year in my arsenal. So appreciate everybody taking a little time out this afternoon to stop by and hear what I got to say. And hopefully, again, we'll see you a little bit later. So thank you.